What is the craziest encounter of rich kid syndrome that you have experienced? I lived with 5 guys, and I was the only one whose parents weren't millionaires. Not clothes at all. They never cleaned. About once a month I would deep clean the house, but 2 days later there was garbage and food on the floor. I found out they all told their parents the poor kid made all the messes when one of their moms came by to scream at me. A guy I met in my early 20s was the richest person I've ever known. His dad was CFO for a big bank, but died when my friend was 14. He grew up in a massive mansion, had his rent paid for in a luxury rental building, and had unlimited funds for drugs. Eventually, his mom forced him to go to rehab, which he did for a couple of months. One day, while he was at rehab, my roommate got a call from him. He said he's outside and didn't know where else to go. He had been cut off from his money, knew that we had an extra room, and asked if he could stay with us while he learned basic life skills, getting a job, buying groceries, cleaning, budgeting, etc. We let him, against our better judgment. About a month in, he had managed to stay sober, keep a job, and not be such a parasitic piece of shit. His mom thought he was doing better too, so she reconnected him to his money. His whole attitude and demeanor completely changed. All of a sudden it's I don't have to stay in this shitty apartment, living like I'm poor. I don't even have to stop doing drugs. I've got my money back. He left right before rent was due, and basically told us to fuck ourselves. 2 months later, he had the exact same situation happen. His mom cut him off again, forced him to go to rehab. He left again and called us, but this time we figured he'd rather not live in our shitty apartment living like he's poor. Not scathing like most of the ones on here. I grew up attending a private school in a developing country, so a lot of my classmates were in the 1% of the country. Whenever we'd be swimming in the school pool, one friend of ours in particular would always remark that swimming is more fun if the pool has a current or waves. To which I had no idea what he was talking about and generally thought he was just being imaginative. One day he invited me over to his house for swimming and he had a 50-foot indoor pool that generated a current/waves. He wasn't lying. They are a lot more fun. My college roommate's mom gave him fucking $1,400 for the weekend just randomly. He blew through the whole thing by Saturday, asked his mom for more money, and was screaming at her because she promised $1,400 for the weekend, and he spent most of what she gave him on Friday, which isn't a part of the weekend. Knew a trust fund girl whose dad gave her the money to start a company. She lost it when she went on vacation for 6 months and forgot she was supposed to pay her employees all the time. She assumed they would not get paid for 6 months and be there when she got back. I quizzed her on this for a few minimum, and it was clear she had no idea what a job was. Look up Corona Del Mar High School cheating scandal. Happened at my school. Parents paid around $50,000 apiece to have a tutor bug the school computers and change students' grades. They all lawyered up big time when it came out, and all the kids got off free and all made it into their top 3 schools. Edit. I would also like to add that this made the news and all the parents whined that their children were innocent and just had a bad tutor. Had a girl I went to school with total 4 brand new cars, think Range Rover, Escalade, etc. I was also in a class with this girl when the teacher handed out papers that needed to be signed by a parent, and she signed it herself and tried to turn it in the same period as it was handed out, and freaked out when the teacher wouldn't accept it. Kids who would talk shit and pick fights and then turn around and say, "If you touch me, my dad will sue." There are a lot more. Girl I went to high school with got a Mercedes for her 16th birthday. Bitched and moaned about the fact that she didn't get a Lexus because her name was Lexi and she thought it would be so cool for Lexi to drive a Lexus with a custom license plate saying Lexi. Her parents did cave and buy her a Lexus for her 17th birthday. My college roommate threw a massive tantrum, like on the floor screaming and crying, because her parents got her a used gas truck for graduation. It was a 2013 truck with less than 10k miles that was fully upgraded / loaded with every possible add-on. We graduated in 2014. The car was maybe a year old. She already had a 2009 Range Rover. This happened a couple of weeks ago at the Infiniti dealership. I was in the waiting room with a very well-dressed lady for our loaner cars. She left the waiting room to look at her loaner and came back crying. She said she drives a fully loaded QX80 and they gave her a QX60 with nothing in it. I said sorry that happened and asked how long she was going to have the loaner for. She said a couple of hours. I wanted to tell her to suck it up, but instead I sat there quiet thinking how life must be easy for her to cry over a loaner car. A girl in my school was surprised by her parents in the school's parking lot with a new BMW. A freaking BMW. Everyone who is out is basically watching this go down, and she starts crying. At first we are all thinking it's because she's so happy, but then she runs back into the school. Apparently they were supposed to show up earlier, I'm assuming when there would be more students to witness the surprise. I felt bad for the dad, because he looked totally embarrassed and sad about it. You know, in his head he's like, I created this monster. Dad bought his college-aged daughter a house in a very nice neighborhood so that she and her friends could live rent-free while they attended university. He remodeled the entire house. In all he probably spent close to $2 million. 2 weeks after moving in, they left a candle burning while they went to the store to get snacks for a football game. Came home and the house was on fire. A month later, it was good and new for them to move back in. A friend I met at uni flew from Auckland to London for a week to go shopping. Clothes were cheaper in London, so to him it made sense. His parents were from Singapore and had no idea just how much cheaper cars were in New Zealand. So when he said he needed $70k for a Toyota Corolla, they gave him the money and he bought a used BMW M3. When he went home for the summer he asked if I could mind the car for him. Given his dad had pretty much cut him off at that point, he just said I had to pay for insurance on it and I could treat it like my own. But as a 19-year sharing a flat and barely getting by, there was no way I could cover the cost of insurance, let alone petrol. Not exactly rich kid syndrome, but there was this family that had 2 children who attended the elementary school that was connected to my middle school. Every day the 2 parents would leave the house and drive separately to pick up their 2 kids before returning home. I should mention at this point that they each drove a Lamborghini, one black and one orange, back to back in the pickup line to get their kids from elementary school. At first I thought they were just being showy, but then I realized that they were two-seaters, so this was really the only way to do it. Had a kid that lived across the hall from me my freshman year of college from Honduras. During one of the icebreakers after freshman move-in, he leaned to me to ask if I knew when the maids came to make his bed/clean. I guess his family was very well off in his home country and the entire semester was an eye-opener for him in actually taking care of himself. I had a scholarship to private school for my secondary education, 11 to 18. We were by no means poor, but compared to the people who were paying full school fees I was a peasant. The vast majority of the students were wealthy, and about half of them were spoiled little brats. Most of the kids got given cars for their 17th birthday in anticipation of passing their driving tests. One boy in particular in my year had a September birthday, so was one of the first to take his test, and he had a huge house/garden, so he already knew how to drive. You can drive on private land at any age here. On the day he passed his test, he got dropped off back at his school in his shiny new sports car. I don't know what type it was, I jaff about cars, but everyone else seemed impressed. He picked up a couple of friends to go for a spin, and before he got 100 meters up the road, he completely wrecked the fucking car. His dad bought him a new one the next day and he complained that it was the wrong color. I live in a town that sits on the shore of a really big, not great, but still big, lake. My friends and I decided a few years ago to buy a boat we could take out onto the open water. None of us are poor, but none of us have a shitload of extra money on the side, so we did it as cheap as we could. We bought a decent boat that was over 30 years old and spent 2 years rebuilding the engine, refinishing some of the interior, and generally getting the thing shipshape. We were super proud of the fact that we managed to get a fully functional and reliable boat together for a little under $5,000. Here is where the story starts. We were out on the boat on a beautiful Saturday drinking beers and cruising the beaches for girls that might want to ride on our new boat. This is why any straight man owns a boat. We pulled up to a beach and anchored, and eventually a few girls waded out to us to see if they could have a couple beers. One thing led to another, and they were climbing aboard to head out for a spin. This is when I noticed one of the girls was not really excited to be on the boat. We got to the middle of the lake and started swimming off the boat, having a good time, except for that one girl. My friend asked her what was wrong. She replied, "I don't even feel safe on this piece of shit. That's my grandmother's island over there. Drop me off now." We were hurt that we had put so much effort into the boat and she dismissed it as a piece of garbage, but whatever, it is kind of a beater. We dropped her off on the island. The dock had over $5 million in boats parked at it. The girl sucked, but grandma was awesome. She brought us all ashore for beers and food, and berated her granddaughter for being such a snob. Little old lady, 80 plus, lives out there alone all summer. We go back to the island all the time to help granny with the yard work and such, in exchange for hanging out on a private island, but I haven't talked to the granddaughter since. You were the sugar in my lemonade.